2023, our weekly webinar, Stopping the Violence. I just recently came from a press conference just like 20, 30 minutes ago on Stopping the Violence in Southeast Washington, D.C. It was excellent. Why it was excellent? Because there is a concerted effort on all parties and the community to start really looking at what it takes to reduce the violence in so-called at-risk communities. So a lot of different topics came up, and I was able to share about what we're doing here. And I think one of the major things that we have contributed to stopping the violence in America is allowing great speakers to come on. And as I shared with them at the press conference, once we have opened that particular door, we have seen that there are around the country extraordinary best practices, but they're islands on their own. How do we bring them all together and look at the best practices from each, inculcate them in our nation and in our communities, individual communities, because we can learn a lot from them. As you always know, the beginning of this Stopping the Violence webinar started with dealing with guns. But we realized that guns are, as I always say, is an inanimate object. And it takes someone to pick the gun up and hurt, shoot, murder another person. So what is the causing? What are the root causes of a person feeling so out of sorts that he would harm his own brother, his own sister, to take their lives? And that has opened up a Pandora box of different root causes, understanding of what is needed for prevention, post situations, and what we can do currently. Today, we have a great speaker and another wonderful speaker. He said something, as I was saying to him, he said something that really caught me. And he said, you know, we have to look at the root causes. And I said, yeah, that's a man of my own heart right then and there. Let me give you a little background of our speaker today before we ask him to come on and share his hopes and his strengths in dealing with stopping the violence. Chief Fabian Valdez has served as the San Fernando Police Chief since February 2022. Chief Valdez is a 25-year veteran of law enforcement, starting his career with the San Gabriel Police Department in 1998. While at the San Gabriel Police Department, he worked a variety of law enforcement-related assignments and special details, which ultimately established him as a court-certified gang expert. He worked collaboratively with school officials and other community organizations during his tenure at the San Gabriel Police Department to educate parents and students of the dangers of gang and drugs. As the San Fernando Police Chief, he has worked tirelessly to support and collaborate with different community organizations to reduce, intervene, and prevent crime through enforcement and mental health, which is really critical. Chief Valdez has made promoting a healthy home environment for children an important focus. He has championed efforts to establish the San Fernando Police Department Parents University, while concurrently collaborating with local middle school administration, faculty to provide mentoring and support for middle school boys. Chief Valdez earned his Master's of Business Administration degree at University of La Verne in 2003, graduated from POST Command College in 2019. Chief Valdez is also an instructor of Rio Hondo Police Academy and adjunct professor at National University. Without any further ado, I want to invite our guest speaker, Chief Fabian Valdez. Welcome.
Thank you, Reverend. Thank you very much. And it's an honor to be here today. And I don't even know where to begin. There's so much. This subject is so loaded. So I'm going to do my best to be concise about what I want to say, but also I want to share with all of you that my experiences as a law enforcement officer and dealing with challenged youth even predates me starting in law enforcement. And I share this with you because I want you to understand that I'm not speaking from a place of academia per se, or a place from only just learning from others, but without saying too much, I came from a pretty dysfunctional home. So with that, I understand a lot of maybe the underlying issues that many of our young people are dealing with and don't know how to properly cope with. So let me start out by our conversation with the word love. Now, all of us, or all of you, and I will share that I am a person of faith myself. If you were to refer to scripture and Corinthians, it defines what love is. So then I will ask you, or I will ask the group, well, what is the opposite of love? And, some people would say it's hate, it's hurt, it's chaos. And so I think when we are talking about the subject of violence, I think we need to look at it from a lens of love or from the lens of a lack of love. And so where does love begin? Where do we learn how to love? Where do we learn how to cope with the world? And many times our coping skills are taught in the home. And so one of the things that early on in my career I noticed was when I was working as a young officer on the streets, when I would interact with gang members who weren't much older than I was. I started in my early 20s, mid 20s, and some of these gang members were my age or even a little older. When I would arrest them and put them into the police car, even older men in their 40s who had done time in prison and were out on the street, but ended up getting caught up in a situation and needed to be arrested. As soon as I got them in the police car and out of a certain environment, many of them would begin crying like little boys. And I quite didn't understand, why is this mean, tough guy who is capable of evil now in the back of my police car crying? And I quite couldn't understand. Fast forward, things happen, in life. Things happen in my life on a personal level. Circumstances break me as a man. I'm broken. But in this brokenness, I really start to lean on my own faith, and this whole other world begins to open up in terms of understanding. I begin to understand things at a much more profound level. And I say this because in looking back, many times these individuals who commit acts of violence, these individuals who engage in criminal activity or behavior are just hurt people that don't know how to cope, that haven't been resilient because they haven't been taught resiliency, whether it's in the home or in the educational system or the social service system. You're dealing with individuals that have been hurt many times their whole life. And we all know that hurt people hurt people. And so with that, as I as I really began to grow in my career and take a different approach, I had some of my own colleagues tell me, "Oh, you're a hippie. You have a hug a thug approach to law enforcement." But I kept telling them that we couldn't arrest our way out of these problems. Sometimes arresting somebody is important, because I think that putting somebody in a cell where they can't run away from their thoughts, they can't run away from their demons, they can't go out and get drugs, many times is an environment where they finally break. But in that brokenness, what are we doing to repair them? So I do believe that there is a purpose for the jail system. But how are we rehabilitating people who now say, "I don't want to live this life anymore"? How are we helping them develop the social skills, the resiliency skills, the ability to think that there is something outside of them that they should live for? So if we, and I'm not going to repeat statistics, but I think it's been shown that a lot of times many of our incarcerated adult males come from homes where there was a lack of a father or male figure. And as I began to study this, I began to ask myself, well, where are our fathers? I began looking at the family. I am not happy to say this. I'm not proud of it. I am a divorced man myself, unfortunately. And I have two sons who went through that divorce with me. And I saw the impacts of divorce firsthand. And yet, my ex-wife and I knew not to weaponize our children against one another. And so, in seeing this firsthand, the impacts of divorce on two boys, two Latino boys, I told myself I need to remain engaged. And both of my sons actually came to live with me. And so in that, as a father, I had to learn how to be a better father than my father was for me. And I realized that in this process of growth and this process of diving deeper into my faith and learning more about myself, I realized that a lot of the hurt that I was carrying was hurt that I carried because I had certain resentment, certain feelings towards my father. I started looking back at my youth and I realized, wow, I used to like to fight a lot. I didn't understand why I liked to fight, but I realized that a lot of that was anger. And anger comes from one of three root emotions: fear, hurt, or shame, guilt. And so many times when we're dealing with angry people, we're dealing with one of those three root emotions. And I realized with myself, wow, I was a hurt young man. And I carried that hurt to a degree into my marriage, which didn't make me the best husband I could have been. And how did I hurt my sons as a result? That generational curse. And so I really began looking at myself, having some very profound conversations with my sons, asking them for forgiveness, asking them, what can I do to be a better father? That humbling that needed to occur. So with that, I really began to think to myself, how many other children are going through divorce? And I started thinking about my career. How many times as a police officer, I'd show up to a call for service where mom and dad are fighting or weaponizing the kids, and the kids are seeing all this. And now I'm thinking to myself, why can't these two individuals act like adults and not weaponize children against each other? Because all they're doing is hurting their children. And so when I became chief at San Fernando, one of the first things I told the community, I told my officers, And some of them were like, who is this guy? And why is he speaking like this? And he doesn't sound like a police officer. I said, my goal was to never have to arrest anybody. I don't want to arrest anybody. And it's like, well, that's kind of the antithesis of what law enforcement, quote unquote, has always, been looked at. Hey, all law enforcement officers enforce the law, they arrest people. And yes, that is a component. But my goal would be to never have to arrest somebody. But how do we really stop crime? And we got to stop it at home. That's where criminal behavior begins. And I started looking back at my career, and as a school resource officer, I can remember being called to a kindergarten class and a kindergarten teacher telling me, this child does not sit down when I ask them to. This child is hitting other children. Can you scare them? And it wasn't my role to scare, but what I really began to understand was, can you provide us that additional structure? Human beings function in healthy structure. So here's my question to the audience, and we don't have to answer it per se, but if I were to ask you to describe what is the structure, or what is the structure of the modern American family, or is there structure in the modern American family, what would your response be? What would your, I don't know if they're parishioners or members of your respective congregations say the structure of the American family is today? And is that structure directly correlated with what we're seeing in terms of behavior? In addition, let's look at the amount of, it's so interesting. And again, I just started watching the series, and I don't know how truthful it is, but I was watching a Netflix series on Bernie Madoff. And it was so interesting to learn about the relationship between Bernie Madoff and his father. And then I started reading something about Rockefeller, John D, the very rich guy, and the relationship between him and his father. And if you look at successful, and I don't want to call him successful because I hear Rockefeller was a cutthroat when it came to money in business. But if you look at the impact that a father has on their children, it is amazing. I started doing my own anecdotal research. What was the relationship between Saddam Hussein and his father? What was the relationship between Hitler and his father? And I started looking at world leaders and going back to their relationship with their fathers. And then I was like, wait a minute. What was the relationship like with me and my father? And what is the relationship like between me and my father? Right? Because we have our earthly father, but then we have another father. That's what, we believe in the Christian faith. So in looking at behaviors, I began to ask myself, how much of these behaviors are a result of fatherhood? How much of these violent behaviors are a result of fatherhood? How much of the behaviors that young ladies demonstrate are because of fatherhood or the lack of a father figure in the home? So as police chief, I began to think to myself, how do I empower parents? How do I get parents? So many times we make the assumption that parents are in a good place to raise children. But if we dig deeper, we recognize that many times our parents are broken people who need help. How can we expect broken people to raise healthy people? So this is where I thought to myself, we need to start a parent academy. And that's what we did here in San Fernando. And we started it at one of our local Catholic schools, and it took off. The parents loved it. It was almost a support group. And I had parents, this is all confidential, but I had some parents share that they had traumas that they didn't even recognize they had, but it began to manifest themselves in the way they were raising their children and in their relationship with their spouse. Or it was one of the reasons why they ended up getting divorced. So I began to think about it more profoundly, and I said, wow, how do we even get people to be in a place to choose the right partner so they could have a healthy home for their children? So this is almost like a chain. Okay, here we are trying to help parents that already have children, but how do we help young people before they even have children be in a good place so they can select the right partner, so they can have a decent home and a decent opportunity to give their children the structure that they need? So I'll tell you right now, we cannot arrest our way out of societal's problems. The school system cannot be the surrogate parent teaching values to our children. And this is where I think our faith-based community really needs to take a bigger role, not just with your members, but how are you propagating the message of healthy home environment? How are you helping those broken parents that are functional, they have good jobs, they pay their bills on time, they have a nice home, but yet aren't providing that emotional support that their children need? So I'm going to tell you, and I heard this recently. How do you spell love? T-I-M-E. Time. And so this is what we here at the San Fernando Police Department really focus on when we engage our parents in our parent academy, is how do you spell love and what type of time? And I'm not talking on Facebook, on your cell phone, but how much time do you really spend with your child? What types of conversations do you have? And I'm going to share this with all of you. Some conversations are difficult to have with our children, but we have to have them. I can remember my son being in first grade, my younger one. And I asked him, are there any girls that you like in your class? And he shared with me that he liked a girl. And I normalized it. I said, it's okay to like a girl. I used to like a girl in first grade. And that's where the conversation started. So with my sons, a lot of the things that I'm sharing, I have put to practice. And with my sons, I had these sometimes tough conversations. When I told them their mother and I were splitting up, it was probably one of the toughest days of my life. And I shared with them that, as a husband, I failed. But in that failure, I was going to be even better, and I was going to be a better father. And, I really leaned into the word. My older son would look at me and says, Dad, who are you? You're changing. And I told him, I just want to be a better person. I want to be a better man. I want to be a better father. Fast forward 6 months later, he starts going to the same church I'm going. He ends up getting baptized. And all of this to say that now he's a police officer and he's a school resource officer. And my younger son is a senior in college, and he wants to be a therapist. And so I'm not saying I have the secret formula, but in my brokenness, in my failure as a husband, in my marriage, I said, I'm going to be better because of that. So and this is what I shared this story with my parents. I too have failed. I am not perfect and I have experiences, but let me share with you what these experiences have taught me. And so many times when you have these candid conversations with parents, it really opens their eyes. And one, they're not ashamed that they failed, but secondly, they're more apt to, if the chief of police is telling me he failed, if the chief of police is telling me it's okay to fail, but to get back up and be better, then they can do it. And so with that, I know I've talked a lot, and it's probably loaded the conversation that I presented to you, or the topic. But if we want to stop violence, it's going to start in the home. And we got to look at the home environment and ask ourselves, is the home environment hurting our children? And in their attempt to cope with violence, are they turning to drugs? Are they turning to, in their attempt to cope with hurt, are they turning to drugs? Are they turning to violence? Are they turning to self-destructive behavior because they're looking for peace and there is no peace at home? So, Reverend, I'll open it up. And
yeah, I want to just recap what you said. I don't know, were you with me today at the press conference?
No, sir.
Okay, it's almost that you mirrored word for word, amen. Because I had to get up a second time, and one of the major points that I brought out was love, and the lack of love, and the love is the most powerful force in the universe. And even the so-called dysfunctional, as you said, if they are touched by love, you will see a conversion, the right type of love. So I shared that, and the community in these at-risk communities are devoid of a lot of love from the system, from the breaking of the family values within the family structure, the environment, the community. So you get like hurt, unresilient people. And also we talked about the fathers, that the father is so important for boys, but also the father is extremely important for the girls, because she learns that she doesn't have to sell herself, that her value doesn't come from, giving herself up, but only a dad can help her crystallize that. A dad can really help her crystallize those points. So those are the things that I was sharing at the press conference. I was wondering, where were you? But anyhow,
sir, let's Reverend, let's be honest, and again, we know where this wisdom comes from. Okay, and they say the word is the truth. And when somebody understands, and is really engaged in that journey of seeking wisdom, the words will always mirror one another from one person to another. Now, there's something very interesting, Reverend, you said, and I didn't mean to cut you off, sir, but
no problem. Go ahead.
When we talked about a father, and I see it even with my own police officers. Sometimes I've had a couple of them tell me, "You're like my dad." And I recognize that men, all of us, and everybody in this room too, we need validation. Validation. Even Christ himself needed validation. When he was baptized and the Lord spoke to him, now I can't quote what he said, but he said something like, "And this is my son who I am pleased with." That is the Father providing that validation.
That's correct.
So when we talk about boys go to gangs, boys will socialize in those groups because that group gives them validation. You belong to us. You are one of us. We will protect you. Young ladies need validation as well. And if they don't get it from their fathers, they're going to seek it elsewhere. And many times that validation is carnal when it doesn't need to be carnal. There's a certain emotional, I call it an emotional tank. Fathers need to fill their children's emotional tank. And when they don't fill it, it runs empty. And they go to other places to fill that tank. Now, again, I think validation is an important word because validation, when done properly, gets a person to a point where they begin to validate others. But when you don't have validation, you can't validate others. So this is what I talked to about in my Parent Academy. How many of you don't feel validated? How many of you were not validated as children? And now how can you expect to validate your children when you never got that? I told, and again, every community is different. In the Latino community, men, this is just a general statement. We have a hard time with our emotions. I asked a group of Latino men recently at this one of our parent academies, when's the last time you told your son you love them? Quiet. I said, when was the last time your father told you he loved you? I'll tell you, personal speak, my dad told me once. My dad was a Vietnam vet. My dad told me once when I was 13 years old, he was drunk. And he said, Mijo, I love you. And I didn't know how to feel. Dad, that's weird. Dad, why are you telling me this? So one of the things that I did as a father every day or every time I speak to I love you, I love you, I tell my son, we're grown, and my older one's 26, my younger one's 21. I love you, and I give him hugs. I don't think I ever got a hug from I don't think once I got a hug from my father. All of this to say I was reversing that. Validation, that's what fathers provide, Reverend. Validation, safety, protection.
Right. Exactly. I thank you so much for that. And I don't want to open it up, but another thing that you did share was structure, and you're correct. Because I've had similar experience about the tough guy, and I think they've heard me say it's so tough, and everything else. But when you get them behind a closed door, there's something else. They reveal some of their pain, and you're correct. Hurt people hurt others, so how do we heal that hurt? And that goes into what you were just sharing, the root cause. The floor is open. Anybody would like to share? Oh, hey, Nasser. Yeah, I see his hand up. Please open your mic.
Hi, Officer Fabian.
Yes, sir.
Wallace. You remember me and my wife? We met each
Yes,
other
I
in
remember.
LAPD.
We had that gathering of faith with the LAPD chief.
Right.
And I think you and we connected right away. Like we said the same thing.
Yes, exactly. I make some short speech and then make some comment, and you right away you said you was agree and you supported me. I really grateful that we meet each other, and I think God really set up actually that meeting for us. And by the way, I'm in Iran, in my country, with my wife. So see my picture?
Yeah, we can see.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm fair. So I'm saying hello from half of the world to everybody. And we just arrived in Iran. So I didn't want to miss your speech. So we set up this, this Zoom here, and I listened to you, and it really moved my heart. I really felt that you are not just chief, you're a pastor, minister, you are a preacher, you are a great father. And I think, what you said is based on your experience, not just preaching and telling people. This is your true experience. and it's really touched everybody's heart. And you're absolutely right. Everything starts from family. You emphasize a lot about family. And actually that day in Chief Moore meeting, I was saying about family is the foundation of everything. And myself, I one time, I set up gazebo and I start to do the haircut for homeless people. And same time that I was doing haircut, I was asking them, what happened? You end up here in the street, you become homeless. And all of them, almost all of them, they said, I didn't know who was my father. I didn't know my mother was involved with, drug, this and that. I don't know how many brothers and sisters I have. I feel lonely. I have nobody, support me and teach me from very young age, childhood. And that's the main reason. And there were many of them into drug, into loneliness, so sad. And I really feel that, that these are children of God. And originally, God wanted one family under God. That is the theme of UPF, Universal Peace Federation, that me and my wife, we are in charge of that, Southern California. So I just want to make this comment that you really touch my heart. I really, truly believe that, you are prepared by God to get that high position to be the chief, and you love children. You and faith leaders should get together and you should speak more about, what you believe. And I really want to meet you and work with you. It's really great and honor to know you. And I'm so happy that they meet each other. And I believe everybody really touched by your speech. So this was great. One of the greatest speech. Hearing from somebody who dealing with all of these crimes. You're a chief. It is the toughest job that you're facing. You want to make society better, and you have to be tough and strong. But meanwhile, you have such a big heart. You don't want to punish people. You don't want to arrest them, you said. And also, I was very good relation with the Sheriff Baca. And he's told me that, prison is not for punishment. It's for education. And this is exactly Father Moon, the founder of Unification Movement. He said, yes, prison is not for punishment. We have to love these people because, and you mentioned about Saddam Hussein. And actually, many times I said, if you would see Osama bin Laden, when he was 4 years old, you would pat him and said, he was such a cute boy. So when people grow up without good parental figure, good leadership in the family, they get into those kind of violence of all kinds. So absolutely, I'm very agree with you. Parenting and father and also mother too, they need to get a better education and learn how to spend a lot more time with their children and teach them, help them, watching them, and all of these things. Otherwise, all of these kids, they grow up and then law enforcement, they get more busy. Thank you so much, Dr. Oliver, my dear friend. God bless you for listening to me. I'm sorry I talked too much.
Wayne, how are you?
I'm doing good this morning. Thank you.
Yeah.
Chief Valdez, this was refreshing to hear your comments. It's not typical for law enforcement to speak strongly in this manner, but I think you are on the leading edge of something new. We want to see a change in our society, and I think that's the way, through love and through heart, that it's going to happen. I do have one question for you. With what you've laid out, going deeply into the root of a family structure and the relation between father and son, as chief of San Fernando, do you have a parental heart, a loving heart toward the people of your community where, hey, this is my family, these are my children in some degree? Do you have that?
You know what? That is an excellent question. And not only do I have that heart for my community, I have that heart for my police officers. So I'll share with you, without getting into specific details, when I came into this department, I inherited a department with some problems, some challenges. In my tenure, in my year and a half, I've had to fire 3 officers. One is facing criminal investigation. So I came in from the outside, and I coupled my faith with the Stoic philosophy, right? We're living a life of virtue versus a life of material and pleasure is something that I was trying to achieve. And I say that because as a chief of police, I have to be the example, but I can't be a leader who wants to be a leader for themselves. As a leader, now it's about others. It's about love. And again, I try to emulate my life after great leaders, including Christ, who even in the Last Supper, when he knew Judas was going to do what he was going to do, he offered him that bread with dip, knowing that I know what you're going to do to me, but I love you anyway. And that is a very profound expression of love. I had some people trying to get me removed from my office, but I said, you know, I know what you are doing, but I love you anyway, because no weapon formed against me will prosper. And only what God allows to happen will happen. And this is where and I'm not gonna, I'll share this with you. I was having panic attacks because it was challenging my own faith. And I thought I had a heart attack, and in the hospital, this is where I thought, you know what, I've given all of my life to God, but have I given my career to God? So I gave it to him, and things have been working out exactly like things have been planned. So with that, that's how I look at my community, my own police officers. We briefly talked about discipline. I'm going to show, it's right here on my desk. Let all that you do be done in love. And so I tell my officers, when I discipline, if I suspend you, if I write you up, it's done with love. You can redeem yourself. You can outlive this if you demonstrate that you have grown. It is not career ending. So just like a father that corrects a son, still loves his son, but he's doing it because he wants him to be better. So that's how I approach it, sir.
Thank you.
You're muted. Zachary, you're muted.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We went to John O'Connor. Somehow the host heard me.
Hey,
And
you're
then to Barbara
been in my country, Zambia. Just to let you know, I'm not in Kansas where I'm supposed to be, but in France. So a little bit like that's a little bit away from territory. But it's wonderful to hear your thoughts, and so much in line, I think, with what we profess and really espouse to do, and the importance of male figures in different positions and with different attitudes is so vital. You know, there's one blogger fellow says that weak men are destroying America. You think it might be, you know, communism, Nazism, or other things, you know, destroying us, you know, weaponry, whatever. But no, men have got to find a way. And today, there's so many people either on, you know, drug abuse, of course, you have gaming, you have pornography, you have betting, you know, it goes on, all kinds of things. And so many men are involved in that. So that weakens, you know, their leadership ability, and they can't do what is right. So I guess my question would be to you, and of course, that means a certain percentage, no matter what category you're in, you're going to have some of these people there. So how about your officers? Do you have some way which you can, of course, be in touch with what's going on with them and how how do you have a support program for them and to keep them online and have them be the great dads? It can't be a great officer unless you're a great dad, right? In some sense, you know, the fatherly kind of feeling is what is really the key here, right? It's important.
Sir, wow, you're asking some very good questions. So first of all, I think as a chief of police, I have to role model.
Yeah.
I have to role model what a good police officer is. But not only that, I allow myself to be vulnerable and I share with my police officers, the ones that want to listen. Look, these are the mistakes I made as a young officer. There was ego involved. And it wasn't until I was broken and my ego was shattered that I really began to understand the world. I failed at my marriage. And this is why I failed. And I'm not gonna sit here and say my wife or my ex-wife had nothing to do. This is what I did wrong. And you know what? It's up to her to own what she did. This is me. This is how I'm gonna be a better partner moving forward. Mental health. I am huge on mental. I study jujitsu. And so I'm 50 years old and I'm still practicing a martial art. I mean, I do it for the physical fitness part, but I also do it because it's a journey. It's learning how to control and subdue my emotions. And this is another thing I teach my police officers. You have to control your emotions. And if I think it's Galatians, what are fruits of the Spirit? One of them is self-discipline. So I teach my police officers, you need to be self-disciplined, but it's very difficult because in law enforcement, many times, you know, these officers are ego-driven. There's a lot of temptation. There's a lot, you know, it's a lot of, I don't want to say a lot of infidelity. There's opportunities for infidelity. There's opportunities for fornication. And so it's me teaching my police officers, be mindful of the temptations. You are given this badge. And I love the story of the Roman centurion. I use that story for my lieutenants and my sergeants. And the story of the Roman centurion, when he bows, when he has the sick slave and he bows before the Lord, asking for the Lord to heal his slave, but yet he knows that he's not worthy to have the Lord in his home. And yet he tells the Lord, you know, I'm a man of authority, but yet he bows before the true authority. And so all of this to say is the expectation that I have of my police officers is that they be humble and that they know where their authority comes from. And that if they have a mental health issue, it's okay to go get help. I encourage them to get help. I am having a jujitsu instructor come and teach my officers not only jujitsu and how to defend themselves, but how to be comfortable in the uncomfortable. How not to lose your composure and maintain your emotional control when you're being tested by others, because people will test them. Mm-hmm. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you. One more thing, you might be interested in what they call the Dignity Index. It's a group out of, I think, Utah that has set that up nationally, but they're promoting 8 kind of different levels. They say love, of course, is highest 8. And one, I think they say is contempt. It's kind of even worse than hatred in some way. I don't know how they define some way you have contempt for yourself, for others. And that, of course, destroys your sense of being, and you have no sense of self-preservation or respect for other people. So it's called the Dignity Index.
All right, thank you very much, Brother John O'Connor. Have a nice time in France. Sounds like it's an exciting trip. Yeah. So also, Barbara, thank you again. Thank you for your answers, Chief Valdez. Barbara Marks, Mosley Marks.
Finally, you got it correctly.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. Chief Valdez, it's so refreshing to hear your presentation. Believe me, I have listened to many presentations. One of the things I admire is that you didn't come with an essay, you didn't come with books, but you came with your life. And one of the strongest messages that came across is forgiveness. Because even though you came from a broken family, you didn't sit with resentment and pity yourself, but you, what's the name of that? Cop's word. Wow. That looks good.
I have that on my desk, it's my Bible. You're right. It wasn't until I forgave my father. I
Yes.
forgave my
Yes.
mother.
Yes.
I forgave my ex-wife. I would pray for her and the man she was dating. You
And-
talk about humility. But I said, in that, I got this gift.
Yes. Yes. Reverend Oliver asked if you were at the meeting with him recently, and I sat here wondering, I just came back from out of town. I was gone for a couple of days, and I was wondering, was he sitting at the table while I was talking? Because you were saying some of the things that I was saying about forgiveness. And also you talked about not only the American family, because we know that the lack of love and the inhibitions that prevent people from excelling, from learning about themselves, it's the lack of love in the family. And because we have broken families, we have broken people. And it's not only in America, but thank you for researching the world leaders, because it's the same thing. And the significant point here is we have to strengthen the family. I have a program called, it's a leadership program for young people. And basically, when we think of it, tomorrow's leader is today's child. If we don't equip today's child with the proper etiquette, the self-love only comes from if the parents love the children. That teaches the children how to love and respect themselves. If a father is the role model for a son, and also the role model for a daughter, and he is the first date for the daughter, she has a criterion of the kind of men she would look towards. Without that, she has no idea and can be sold for anything. So all the problems that we face in society comes from the foundation that's been broken and splintered as a family. We need to heal the family. Once we heal the family, we can heal everything else. But there are certain situations where people have come from a single parent that can also be corrected. So I thank you for all the undertaking that you have done so far. And, I know many people are having problems with policemen. Policemen are also sons, somebody's son. And I thank you for helping with the program you have for the policemen in your department. I hope and wish that can extend to other police departments, because we want our community to respect the officers, but we also want the officers to respect themselves. You cannot demand respect if you want to demand respect, first you have to respect yourself. And so we want our community to be able to look up to our police officers, but they have to take the responsibility. That's another thing. You have exuded responsibility in every step you took, and that's why I can admire you and hope. I wish you could clone yourself and send parts of you, across the nation, because responsibility is something that people don't take lightly. They don't seem to understand. Without responsibility, there's no freedom. And you have given freedom to those that you're exemplifying your standard, because standard is not taught by just words. We have to show it by our actions. So I thank you for that. I mean, I could go on because I am so inspired by your talk. I could go on, but before Reverend Oliver kicks me off his program, I'm going to stop here and say thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for the kind words. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara, for that as well. I think there was Donna Avey. She had made some comment on there. I thought that was quite relevant as well. Let me go to them. Let's see. It was, she said, yeah, thank you so much for this content. We need to be able to connect our community leaders and community members to your basic core value and experience-based message. Such a powerful message. Are your fellow police officers nationwide able to address their arrest policies with the concepts to set up their programs? How can your parent academy be multiplied to many other communities? Welcome, Donna.
So excellent. Real quickly, this has got to be a movement. This has got to be a movement. You know, I know that even amongst my colleagues, I'm an anomaly, and not to say this in one way or another, but
It's true.
so it's even convincing them, look, this is what we're doing, and this is how it's working or not working, but this is the need. And I came into a community that has a significant need, that was starving for this. So they've really taken to what it is we're doing here. And I'm trying to share that message. And when I talk to other police chiefs and tell them what it is we're doing here, a lot of them are, I'm not surprised. I don't want to say awed, there's like, wow, okay, that's different. And so again, this has got to be a message that law enforcement, I believe that there are some areas, I'd say Southern California is pretty progressive. There are other parts of the country that would look at this style of law enforcement and say, that is just totally weird. That almost sounds communistic. But we have to, not only do I think we need to rebrand what law enforcement is, but we need to rebrand what is a law enforcement officer. And yes, there is a need to arrest. There's a need to have a SWAT team, because unfortunately there are dangers like that. But we also, whether we like it or not, are almost like street social workers. So we are the first contact that when a family is having an acute emotional crisis and they're calling a police officer because the husband's hitting the wife, or the wife is psychologically abusing the husband, because that happens too. Domestic violence, I think in reality, is about equal. Men tend to do it physically, women tend to do it more psychologically. So with that, when an officer goes into a home, how does he help that family? And what I envisioned, and again, this is lofty, is having several resources standing, not literally standing, but several resources that officer can identify and say, hey, your family might be served well if you contact this number. We're trying to create a chaplain corps, a chaplain program here at the San Fernando Police Department. We don't have one, because I know my police officers can't go and fix a broken family, but a pastor can come in. Somebody of faith can come in and really deal with the underlying issues, whether it's a lack of love, a lack of forgiveness, abuse. The police officer can't triage that. And the way I look at our police officers is they're like ER doctors. They stabilize a situation. But who does the physical therapy? Who does the mental health therapy? That's not our role. We're not, that's too much.
Right.
That's where other resources come in and back us up.
Thank you. May I comment one thing? Anchorage, Alaska and our state has been working on setting up mental health teams to support our police officers and to work directly with families as the liaison and to provide the chaplains and support services. So you might check with our police department in Anchorage, Alaska. I forgot the police chief's name and I apologize for that. I'm on his council, but I forgot his name. So, but check in with them, okay? Because they may give you some ideas and maybe the dialogue would help our community too.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you.
Can't hear you.
Thank you, Chief Valdez. As we come to the end, actually, as everyone has already shared, I concur with everyone. You've done a very valiant, heartfelt,
Mhm,
practical,
mhm.
realistic, root cause presentation that I think everyone can deal with. I know that you're correct. In many ways, you're the anomaly. But many times throughout the course of the Bible, it was the anomalies that God had to use to make the substantive and sustainable changes that were needed.
Mhm.
And so many times those, even your officers, are victims too, and this is why many times they might react a certain way or can't react a certain way in crisis situations. So what you have put forth is incredible. So we look forward to hearing from you again.
Yeah.
But as we close, if you have some closing words, we would like to hear them as well.
Thank you, Reverend. So it was an honor to be here today and be able to hopefully provide you some insight as to what it is we're doing here at the San Fernando Police Department, what I would like to begin doing in terms of a profession, getting us to approach the problem of violence and crime in a different manner. And I think there needs to be, and this is where the faith-based community comes in, we need to really start having those tough conversations with people that are not members of our congregation, but with our local officials and our state officials, and really talk about how are we going to address this problem. And we can throw as much money as we want to at whatever mental, but how are we dealing with the hurt? How do we deal with hurt? Are we properly dealing with the hurt? And this is where I think the faith-based community really needs to come to the table and say, we can take that on.
Thank you very much. Actually, you hit one point as we conclude. One of the reporters asked the faith community that was speaking at the press conference, are you able to go over and transcend your own denominations to work together for the ultimate healing of the community? So you made that point. That's a pertinent point. And he asked that question. I think they were a little shocked, but it was a pertinent question. Well, thank you so much for sharing those, man. I look forward to talking with you again and having you on again. And God bless you. We applaud you. Thank you.
Thank
I
you very much. God bless everybody.
just want to say
Thank
one
you.
sentence.
Thank you. Excellent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. God bless.
My wife just said
God bless.
one sentence to officer.
Anyway, Officer Valdez, thank you so much for accepting our invitation and asking God for permission to be on our program. And we hope that many police officers can do the same.
Yes,
Thank
yes.
Amen.
Yeah, and
Thank
you
you.
may want to check with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department because they already have such a program that's been working really well. So they can perhaps help you with that. It sounds
Absolutely.
fabulous. Thank you so much. Really
Thank you.
wonderful.
Everybody try to get you officer. All
Wow.
right.
Reverend
everybody.
Oliver, thank you
Yes.
for having
Okay, another good catch.
Valdez today.
Thanks a lot, officer, for accepting our
Officer
invitation. I'm
Valdez.
really gonna invite you again. for different
Okay.
program. Thank you. God
Anytime,
bless you.
anytime. I'll be more than happy to.
Sure.
May you find the
right.
true love for your life come in the near future.
God bless.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to be doing the Lord's work.
You're
Right.
it'll happen.
It's the last
It'll happen.
comment that was made, and I think it's very apropos. Let's pull you out on a nationwide level as anomaly but let's make you the norm. Amen.
Yeah.
God bless
Yeah.
All right.
Amen.
Everybody.
you.
Thank you. It was
Very
very-
good. Awesome.
Good night.
God bless family.
Okay.
God
God
bless.
bless you.
God
Yeah.
bless
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you.
God
Thank you.
bless.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you,
Safe
everyone.
trip, Nasser and Lee.
Yes, that was
All right.
wonderful.
Thank you, everyone.
Pray
God
for
bless.
us that we come
Thank
back for sure. From
Thank
here.
you,
Oh,
Reverend
that's right.
Oliver.
And that's right. NASA, you're way in Iran as well. So we have two travelers. I just got back.
Yeah,
yesterday.
Yeah, the US government told it that people don't travel there.
No, that's fine. That's great.
But that's his home. Amen.
Oh, no, I know.
Yes, yes. No, that's great.
Okay. God bless everyone. Take care.
Good, God bless.
God bless.
Yeah.
you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Zachary.
God bless.
Welcome
Family,
back
that's
from
it.
Africa.
Thank you.
Oliver.
Thank you so much.
Hello.